Okay, so let's talk about the 2022 election again. At the 2022 election, the coalition as a group received just over 35, nearly 36% of the vote. And I'm defining the coalition as the Liberal Party, the Nationals, the LNP in Queensland, and the Country Liberal Party in the Northern Territory. Effectively, the members that have voted in this block become the coalition in Canberra to attempt to form government. On the opposite side of that major party split is the ALP. The ALP at the last election in 2022 received 22.5% of the vote. So in other words, about 3% of the population put the Liberals or the coalition as their first preference as opposed to the Labor Party. But then the ALP won the election. Why is that? It was because of the preferences they received. And let me go into this in a little bit more detail, and I hope I don't bore you. Okay, so in terms of first party preference voting, as I said, the two major parties received just over 68% of the vote. But that leaves 32%. Where did the other 32% go? Well, Toffa talks about the so-called freedom parties, which in the case of the 2022 election, that was the United Australia Party, the Katter Party, Pauline Hanson One Nation and the LDP. Combined, they received just over 11% of the vote. The Greens received just over 12% of the vote, and independents received just over 5% of the vote. So if you take those three groups, the freedom parties, the Greens, and the independent vote that was made at the last federal election, that represents about nearly 29% of the vote. The remaining 3% is everyone else, and that's the micro parties that received votes. Now, again, let me say, this is the House of Representatives. I'm not talking about the Senate. I could probably do a separate video on the Senate, but let's just focus on the House of Representatives.